Hello, welcome back to IM Movies. Today we're covering the disturbing science fiction action movie, Universal Soldier. This movie revolves around the story of soldiers who are killed during the Vietnam War and then reanimated as genetically enhanced, virtually indestructible super soldiers, called Universal Soldiers or Unisols. So guys, before we get started, give us a thumbs up, drop a comment, and hit the subscribe button to stay updated. With that said, let's get started. During the Vietnam War, a US soldier named Private Luke comes across his fellow soldier panicking about how their sergeant, Andrew Scott, had turned against them in a Vietnamese village, killing everyone. The soldier runs as he continues to panic and soon gets blown up. Luke decides to investigate the matter further and walks into the village. Luke finds dead soldiers and two Vietnamese couples tied down, ready to be executed by Sergeant Scott, who at this point was making a pendant using human ears. Luke is confused and asks Sergeant Scott what is happening. Sergeant Scott claimed that they were all traitors. At this point, Luke understands that the sergeant is out of his mind. Then Luke suggested that they leave the area since the war was over. Sergeant Scott asks Luke if he's a traitor too, and he responds with no. However, the sergeant asks him to prove it by killing the couple. Soon, Sergeant Scott kills the Vietnamese man, but Luke quickly hits him and runs away with the Vietnamese lady. As they run, Sergeant Scott shoots Luke in the leg and uses a grenade to kill the Vietnamese lady. This angers Luke, making him use the bayonet of his gun to stab Sergeant Scott in the chest. Sergeant Scott shoots at Luke, and he returns fire as they both fall to the ground dead. The next day, US troops arrive at the location to get the bodies. One of them sees the pendant of ears on Sergeant Scott's neck and shakes with fear. Then he asks his superior how he should report what he just saw, and his superior tells him nothing happened there, meaning they will be reported to be missing in action. Soon, he makes a call to a man named Lincoln, and then orders his men to pack the bodies in ice. Years later, in a desert area in Nevada, a plane carrying a huge truck arrives. The truck opens and augmented soldiers known as Universal Soldiers or Unisols alight from it. These once dead soldiers have been built with super strength and fitted with combat-ready devices. Meanwhile, some gunmen have taken dam workers hostage and begun to kill them one after the other. Colonel Perry, the leader of the Unisol program, arrives at the scene to see several news agencies trying to cover the news. The colonel walks into the situation room and confirms dropping the Unisols off about a mile away from the dam. Soon, a news reporter known as Veronica arrives late at the scene, and her boss scolds her. She immediately begins to report the news stating that over 30 hostages have been held down by the gunmen demanding the release of their gang members in prison. After reporting the news, Veronica gets into an argument with her boss, and he fires her. Meanwhile, the Unisols begin operation inside the dam by first taking out the gunmen outside and soon proceed to rescue the hostages. One of them disguises as a repairman, and the gunmen shoot him down, but he surprisingly gets back up and kills the leader of the gunmen while the other Unisols kill the remaining gunmen. After that, Sergeant Scott, now known as GR-13, gives his status reports. However, Private Luke, who is now known as GR-44, wouldn't respond as he soon has a flashback of memories seeing the hostages scream just like the Vietnamese couples he once tried to save. GR-44 turns back to look at GR-13, and he remembers the incident. Soon, Colonel Perry addresses the press, telling them that this is the third successful mission of the Unisols. However, he informs them that the identity of the Unisols will remain classified for the safety of their families. Now, since Veronica wants her job back so badly, she asks her former cameraman co-worker Huey to accompany her to the military base as she seeks to get the identity of the soldiers, hoping it will make a big news. Later that evening, she drives close to the military base, and they begin to film. Colonel Perry soon arrives at the base and goes into the truck. Dr. Woodward, the doctor in charge, informs the colonel about how GR-44 froze after the mission. The colonel speaks to GR-44 asking him why he didn't respond, but he only says that the village was innocent. The doctors recognize that it might have been a memory from the past and suggest taking GR-44 off the program for a while. The colonel refuses and asks that they give them their memory clearance serum instead. Meanwhile, as Veronica sneaks closer to the base to get a closer look at things, she sees Dr. Garth, Woodward's assistant, open a chamber with a wounded Unisol. Immediately after Garth leaves, Veronica walks closer to take pictures of the Unisol. However, Unisol opens his eyes and she panics. Soon the soldiers spot her through CCTV and send Unisols after her. Veronica runs into her car and Huey drives away fast. However, they soon hit a pile of drums and crash. The Unisols arrive at the crash and pull them out of the car. The colonel asks the Unisols to retrieve the camera and bring back the hostage. GR-13 asks for the camera, and Veronica tries to talk her way through it, but GR-13 soon points his gun at her and immediately kills Huey as he tries to protest. GR-44 has the same flashback again and hits GR-13 in the face before taking her to their vehicle. The colonels soon see GR-44 attempting to run away with Veronica and command GR-86 to stop them. After a while, GR-44 stops the car after receiving an order from Colonel Perry through the device on his head. Veronica soon realizes he's been controlled by the device. She quickly removes it and steps on the gas. At this point, Dr. Woodward, the lead doctor, expresses his concern over the death of Huey to Colonel Perry, but the colonel only cares about going after GR-44. Dr. Woodward decides to quit on the spot, but Colonel Perry tells him that if the program goes wrong, they'll all go to jail, and they all begin to track GR-44. However, GR-44's vehicle soon ran out of gas, and he pushed it over 30 kilometers per hour and stopped at a motel's gas station to get a refill. Unfortunately, the station is out of gas. Veronica also tries to make a call, but she's told to rent a room to get access to a phone, which she agreed to do. In the room, GR-44 begins to strip naked to cool off as Veronica tries to make a call. Soon, the colonel and his men arrive close to the motel, and they begin to scan the whole area. The colonel instructs GR-13 to destroy all communications towers in the area. At this point, Veronica finds out on TV that she's been declared wanted for the death of Huey. She gets frustrated by the news and the fact that she can't make any calls. GR-44 follows her outside and warns about her safety. After a while, GR-44 collapses and asks for ice to cool off. Veronica realizes how much he's been burning up and begins to put ice on him, and later realizes that GR-44 also has the ability to heal its wounds. Veronica goes back to the gas store to demand to use their phone and soon realizes it's not working either. GR-13 spots her on her way out, but the colonel instructs him to wait for them to be together. Meanwhile, GR-44 is back up and watches TV as Veronica joins him. GR-44 soon notices the presence of the Unisols and quickly docks with Veronica as the Unisols begin to shoot sporadically. GR-44 begins to break down walls to escape the shooting. Soon he gets to a room which happens to be solid concrete and stops. Colonel Perry orders the Unisols into the motel to search for them, but they can't find them. Soon, GR-44 and Veronica emerge from under a couple sheets and steal their car. Dr. Garth spots them leaving the motel, and the Unisols begin to shoot as they drive away. On their way, Veronica questions GR-44 about his family. GR-44 stops to think about it, but he can't remember any of it. Later, they arrive at a gas station, and GR-44 asks Veronica to find and remove any tracker in his body. After a while, the colonel arrives outside the gas station. They break in and begin to shoot sporadically, but by the time they realize it is a trap, it is too late. The station had been filled with petrol and soon it explodes, setting the Unisols on fire. GR-44 and Veronica use this opportunity to enter the truck and steal files about the Unisols before driving out of the area. GR-13 soon grabs GR-44 from the back seat and tries to strangle him. They both struggle for a while and later crash into a stone, causing GR-13 to forcefully fall through the windshield. After losing some of his Unisols to the fire, Colonel Perry orders the rest into the truck, but GR-13 refuses to follow his command. GR-13 tells the colonel that his name is Andrew Scott and kills him. Sergeant Scott enters the truck and announces his takeover, killing the first two people who challenged him. Later, Sergeant Scott begins to inject himself with muscle enhancers as Dr. Woodward and Garth plan to eliminate him. Veronica begins to study the files in a restaurant and soon finds the contact of Dr. Gregor, who also worked on the Unisol project 25 years ago. Soon she leaves to make some calls, leaving GR-44 to eat. Back in the truck, Dr. Woodward informs Sergeant Scott about his thermal monitor and the need for him to cool off. While inside, Dr. Garth tries to increase the dose of his memory-clearing serum, but Sergeant Scott realizes this and kills him. Back in the restaurant, while Veronica tries to make some calls outside, GR-44 gets into a fight with a bunch of guys after eating a lot of food without money. Meanwhile, Sergeant Scott continues to search for GR-44 and stops at a truck park to ask for information. Meanwhile, Dr. Woodward decides to end it all by blowing up the remaining Unisols inside the truck. Sergeant Scott tries to revive two of the Unisols by dragging them to a cold room, but it is too late. However, GR-86 survives the blast. Later, GR-44 and Veronica arrive at Dr. Gregor's place, and they soon see a news report of Sergeant Scott killing people inside a supermarket. This makes Dr. Gregor agree to help Veronica and GR-44 to stop Sergeant Scott. The following day, GR-44 hands Veronica a bus ticket to Los Angeles, as GR-44 doesn't want Veronica to be involved anymore, and it's for her own safety. She heads to the bus and pretends to leave, but soon shows up behind the bus after it takes off. She stayed, indicating Veronica has feelings for GR-44, but unfortunately, Their moment went quickly as the police were already waiting for them at the background. As the police take them away, Sergeant Scott and GR-86 appears behind them and begins to attack them with grenades, killing the policemen along the way. GR-44 and Veronica manage to escape the road rage as Sergeant Scott's truck falls from a hill. Later that day, Veronica planned to take GR-44 to his parent. She got the location when reading the files that they took before. As soon as they arrived to GR-44 parents' farm, his mother immediately recognized him as Luke, and she hugs him tightly. That night, it begins to rain, but Veronica insists on leaving. However, it appears that Sergeant Scott didn't die. He ties up Luke's parents and uses Veronica to lure Luke out for a fight. They begin to fight and Sergeant Scott injects himself with more muscle enhancers. Later, Veronica sets herself free and tries to escape, but Sergeant Scott throws a grenade at her. Seeing this, Luke fights furiously, but he is no match with Sergeant Scott. In a swift move, Luke grabs one of Sergeant Scott's muscle enhancer and injects it to himself. This gives him that extra power to fight, and later kills Sergeant Scott by grinding him with a miller. Finally, Luke reunites with his parents, and also feels lucky as he finds out Veronica is still alive. And the movie ends here. The film serves as a cautionary tale about the ethical and moral dilemmas that can arise when technology is used to control and reshape human beings for combat. So guys, what are your thoughts on the conclusion of the movie? Feel free to leave a comment. Don't forget to hit that like button, share this recap, and subscribe to stay updated for the next one. Until next time.